And welcome to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. Thank you for joining us. We have our fifth candidate forum in our sixth forum series. So we're coming down to the home stretch. We will be talking to candidates for city council and county council this evening. We're very excited for the discussion tonight. But again, thank you for everyone who's been joining us this entire fall for all of our candidate forums. As many as you know, we had the mayoral forum last Monday, and we will have Court of Common Pleas forum next Monday. But tonight is all about city council and county council. And before we get into our candidates and our questions and everything like that, we do have some housekeeping that we always do before our forums, giving folks important information about the upcoming election, because we are getting closer to the election and deadlines are coming up. So Miracle, my co-host and my co-pilot on this mission, could you share with us some of the important dates that are coming up with the election?
Yes, most definitely. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kahari. Like he said, we're having this fall forum series because we want to let people know what the positions are that they're going to be voting for on November 2nd, as well as what questions and what the positions are going to be taking, how it's going to be impacting their lives every single day. But in order to vote for these people, you have to be registered to vote. In Pennsylvania, you have to be at least 18 years old, a resident of Allegheny County or your jurisdiction for 30 days, and registered. So that means you have to go online to the new website, vote.pa to register. If you've moved, you're new to the area, your last name has changed, you've got a new address, something has happened, you are recently released from incarceration, or you are awaiting trial, you are still eligible to vote. Please make sure you're registered to vote. The important registration deadline is October 18th. You have until October 18th to register to vote. Unlike last year, there is not going to be any type of delays. You have to have all of your information submitted, whether it is down at the Board of Elections office, because you don't have a state ID, you want to make sure your stuff is in. Please go down to the Board of Elections office to register in person. You must be registered by close of business on the 18th, or you will not be allowed to vote on the November 2nd election. If you say, you know what, I may be traveling, I don't want to be outside, I'm still leery of the lack of drop boxes and COVID is still out here, if you want to vote by mail, you must submit an application by the 26th. Given the mail is still delayed, basically, everyone's been impacted by, labor shortages and things and whatnot. You want to make sure you actually register for your vote by mail before the 26th. While the 26th is the deadline, if you're mailing something in, they're going to mail something back, and then you don't want to have a situation where you don't get your ballot in time, or you have an issue and you have the wrong ballot and you can't vote. So please make sure you are registered early. Make sure you go ahead and submit your vote by mail application. The deadline is the 26th. And of course, election day is Tuesday, November 2nd. And again, with this election, you're not going to have those extra 3 days to verify your information. We want to make sure, again, that you go ahead and make your voting plan, look at your polling place, because on November 2nd, that's the one and done. There's not going to be any changes. So please make sure you are registered to vote. All right.
Thank you for that, Miracle. And before we get started, Just again, with some normal housekeeping that we do, we're going to give a quick rundown of the roles and responsibilities, starting with Allegheny County Council. And Allegheny County Council is the legislative branch of our county government. The council is made up of 15 elected officials, 13 district representatives, and 2 at-large members. Members are elected to 4-year terms on a staggered basis. The powers and duties include approving and amending legislation submitted by either the county executive or a council member, annually adopting a balanced county budget, permitting use of county land, levying taxes and fees, confirming or rejecting appointments for county agencies and employees. And Pittsburgh City Council is the legislative branch of Pittsburgh city government. It carries out duties in accordance with the home rule charter and laws of the state, and is primarily responsible for making laws which govern the city of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh City Council proposes, debates, and votes on legislation governing or affecting the city. The body also approves appointments as provided by the charter, regulates revenues and expenditures, incurs debt, and approves the final operating and capital budgets for the city. Council is responsible for the introduction of legislation generated by the administrative branch of city government. Council may also introduce legislation generated by individual council members or council as a body. So that's just a little bit of a breakdown, and we're really excited to introduce our guests for this evening. We have County Councilwoman Anita Prizio. We have City Councilman Daniel Lavelle, City Councilwoman Erika Strassburger, and candidate for City Council in the South Hills section of the city, Connor Mulvaney. So I'll welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know everyone's busy. We're a few weeks out from the election, as well as we having 3 sitting elected officials who always have the tough job of having to run for office while currently serving in office. So let's start. We'll start with Councilwoman Prizio, and then go to Councilman Lavelle, Councilwoman Strassburger, and then Connor Mulvaney, just a quick introduction, just a few words about yourself, why you're running, and just introduce yourself to the viewers.
Thank you very much for having me, and happy National Coming Out Day to everybody, and happy Indigenous Peoples Day. So I am your current county council member. I represent from Reserve to West Deer. These are river towns. These are affluent suburbs and rural areas. I'm a daughter of 2 immigrants. My dad came from Italy. My mom came from Germany. They met at night school, and they started a business in East Liberty called Pittsburgh Crankshaft Service. And that's where I've worked for the past 30 years. Although my parents did not have a college education, they found education very important. And I was able to, pursue my law degree at the University of Pittsburgh as well as my MBA. I've dedicated a portion of my life to part-time public service. I spent 8 years on O'Hara Township Council and almost 4 years on County Council. And I've lived in O'Hara all my life. I'm living in the house my parents built. My late husband and I raised our 2 children here in O'Hara Township. Allegheny County has always been my home, and I want to do my best to ensure that Allegheny County remains a welcoming, diverse, and the most livable county in Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And now joining us, Councilman Lavelle. And full disclosure, me and Councilman Lavelle go way, way back. We started in politics basically the same day in Councilman Udin's office 20 years ago. It's crazy to me. So always good to see you. I ran into you the other day up at the baseball field, but thanks so much for taking out your time. And it's always good to be with an old friend, Councilman Lavelle.
Thank you. Thank you. Indeed, it's always good to be with you, Most. So Councilman Daniel Lavelle, I represent the 6th City Council District. It starts in Oakland. So I represent Oakland, the Hill District, Uptown, Downtown, and then I cross over to the North Side, parts of Central North Side, Manchester, California Kirkbride, Fineview, and Perry Hilltop. I'm running for re-election to City Council, primarily because I believe I have some work that is unfinished. It's a few more things that I need to get accomplished. Primarily, well, at least one of them, the redevelopment of the Lower Hill District site. We're getting ready to break ground on a new office tower on the site. I'm proud to announce that we currently have about 43%, I believe, MWB participation on that development, which is one of my goals and objectives since I came to office, which was to begin to change the economic reality, especially for African-American communities here within the city of Pittsburgh. And I know we got a number of us to get to, so I'll be brief so we can get to the questions, but it's always good to be with you.
Thanks so much. And Councilwoman Strasburger.
Thank you so much, Kahari. Thank you so much for holding these forums. They're really important, and I'm so thrilled to be here tonight. My name is Erika Strassburger. I represent the 8th Council District for the City of Pittsburgh on the Pittsburgh City Council, and that encompasses Shadyside, parts of Squirrel Hill, Point Breeze, and Oakland. So it's geographically the smallest council district, but it's very dense, full of lots of people, and includes institutions like universities and students, a range of all sorts of different people of all ages. I started in city council as my first term, so I started about 3.5 years ago, and before that was chief of staff to my predecessor, Dan Gilman, for 4 years. And prior to getting into local politics, I was involved in politics on the other side of things as an advocate. So I was an environmental advocate here in Pittsburgh and also up in New Hampshire for about a decade before I entered local politics. And that's where I really cut my teeth in politics. That's where I learned that if you want something done, you have to get the right people into office to be able to accomplish the goals that you've set out, whether it is fighting fracking and getting more clean, renewable energy to power our houses and our businesses and our cars, or whether it is ensuring that our waterways stay clean and our air that we breathe is clean. So those are big priorities for me. But whether it's that, whether it's housing, whether it's creating jobs, whether it's attracting people here while taking new people here to the region while taking care of those who already live here, whether it's eradicating hate, whether it's building bridges between neighborhoods, I feel, as Councilman Lavelle said, that like I still have work to do, a lot of work to do, which is why I'm running for re-election. And so pleased to be here tonight to talk a little bit about the issues.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Connor Mulvaney.
Yeah, thank you, Kahari. Thank you, One Hood, for doing this event. I'm excited to be here to share a little bit about me, since folks might not have heard my name before. My name is Connor Mulvaney. I'm running for Pittsburgh City Council in District 4. So that's Brookline, Beachview, Carrick, Overbrook, Bon Air, and a little sliver of Mount Washington. I'm running as a green, and I'll get it out of the way first. What does that mean? We try to center social justice, nonviolence, ecological wisdom, and grassroots democracy in everything that we do. And that's what I want to bring to Pittsburgh City Council. I'm running a campaign that's completely independent, again, because we're Greens, right? We have to figure out a way to do things outside of sort of the normal business as usual. We're not taking any money from developers or super PACs or corporations. I've signed the No Cop Money Pledge. I've signed the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. I'm really here to try to shake council up. I don't think that the good old boys are getting it done anymore, especially in District 4. And I don't think that there should be a sort of hush-hush, closed-door way of going about business anymore. People are sick of it. I'm personally sick of it, and that's one of the reasons that I wanted to run. I've previously done work with South Hills Safe Streets, which is like a mini Bike Pittsburgh in the South Hills. We've been advocating for safer streets, better sidewalks, better accessibility, just trying to give people as much freedom of movement and ability to live their lives to the fullest as they can. Aside from that, I've been active in the Green Party with their policy committee. I've really tried to step in the last year and be more active. We marched all summer last year and tried to live our values, try to gain grassroots energy and bring it up. So we really want to listen to people. We've been doing surveys in our community as we've been door knocking this fall. We want to make sure that people have safe streets, that they can have a roof over their heads, that they get their street plowed finally. We want to really listen to people and take the issues that are important to them into council. And we take it seriously. We want to hear from folks. So I encourage people, if you haven't heard of us, engage our campaign on social media. We're youth-led, I should say too. Like I said, no more business as usual way of doing things. We're here to shake up city council, and I'm excited to be here.
Thanks so much for that. And we with our our usual disclaimer that we invited folks from all political stripes and parties. So we thank those who joined us tonight. And we didn't, I know Pittsburgh is a Democratic city, but we just didn't invite our Democratic friends. We invited everybody, and the folks that you see are the folks that took their time out to have this conversation, and we really appreciate that. So I'm going to hand it over to Miracle to start the question and answer portion of our forum.
Okay, we're just going to go in reverse order. What a lot of you already talked about, like why you're running. So our next question is, what changes do you see council making in the near future that's going to address the issues specifically around the lack of affordable housing and the reality of increased displacement? We'll start with you, Connor, and we'll go in reverse order.
Sure, thanks. So first of all, we need permanent and immediate eviction protection. We have to keep people where they're at right now. We have to keep Pittsburgh home for the people that want to call it home. The piecemeal approach, the sort of stumbling that's happened in city council throughout the pandemic isn't good enough. We've saved some folks. We have to make sure that we're saving everybody and make sure that housing is a human right and that everybody has access to it. When I'm elected, I hope to create a mandatory affordable unit requirement based on region median income, not market value, to, like I said, try to keep Pittsburgh home and make sure that the people who've historically lived here, the people who want to live here, the people that keep our city running can continue to live here. And that's a top priority as we're continuing to feel our way out of the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Councilwoman Strassburger?
Well, that is a big question, so I'll try to address some of it. But I think that the biggest challenge that we have to recognize is that our city is, when we're talking about new housing that's being developed, it's being developed unevenly. In the part of town that I represent, we have been seeing development of new housing of all sorts, but mostly market rate housing for a long time. And we're getting to the point where we need to mandate that a certain portion of every project has affordable units in it. We're already starting to see that in places like the Shakespeare Giant Eagle project that's being proposed. But that has to happen on a much larger scale. In other parts of town, there just needs to be more investment in the commercial districts or in the downtowns or in housing in general. And in other parts of towns, we need to rehabilitate the vacant lots and the vacant buildings. So it's an uneven kind of situation across the city. One size does not fit all. But in some places, inclusionary zoning is absolutely the answer where the markets are hot. We're seeing that in Lawrenceville and Bloomfield and Garfield. And I think we're going to take that into the district I represent soon, in Oakland and Shadyside soon. And we can continue to grow our housing opportunity fund. We can continue to put more, which covers a whole range of different types of affordability for renters and for homeowners options. We can continue to support community land trusts, which is an amazing tool that we have in Lawrenceville and Oakland, but also the City of Bridges Land Trust, which can allow for, even when someone owns their house on a land, that land requires that house stay permanently affordable. So future homeowners can build credit and build home equity, but can ensure that property stays permanently affordable. And I think that the other thing is we need to have all the policies in place that help facilitate the development of affordable housing that make it less expensive. So that's things like making sure that our permits, licenses, and inspection department runs efficiently as possible, as well as our zoning department, as well as our planning department, and that we have other measures in place that reduce the cost of building affordable housing, like reducing parking minimums, which requires that you have to have a certain number of parking spaces inside a new apartment building that's being built. If we get rid of those, it brings down the cost tremendously. So that's just one example of a type of policy that we can work to, that's not necessarily exactly housing related, but all fits into the big bucket of making affordable housing that we're building less expensive and easier to build here in the city. So we have to do a lot of different things to open our arms to people who want to develop that in that way, and also have the carrot and the stick to be able to ensure that housing is being converted and new housing is being created in that way.
Thank you so much, Councilman Lavelle.
So Councilwoman Strassburger really hit the nail on the head when she talked about the cost of affordable housing. Building more affordable housing in our city is not an issue of will. This council has proven we absolutely want to put resources towards affordable housing. At the URA, we can demonstrate how we are actively working with the Pittsburgh Housing Development Corporation, which is an affiliate of the URA, to provide more affordable housing. But affordable housing is also very expensive. And so the biggest thing we must do is increase funding for affordable housing. The most immediate thing we're going to do is begin approving the spending plan for the Housing Opportunity Fund, which is funded at $10 million a year. The URA will actually vote on it this coming Thursday, and then it will come over to City Council for approval as well. It was mentioned about renter protection and ensuring that people are not getting evicted once a lot of the moratoriums are lifted. As part of that budget, we were going to be allocating, I believe it's about $425,000 to legal aid to help people actually stay in their homes. We currently have about $800,000 in that pot of funding at the URA. So those are some of the more immediate things that we can actually do.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Prizio.
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah, I think the county should work in coordination with the city when we talk about these things. As Connor said, I believe housing is a human right. And I also believe that when the county does their LRTAs and TIFs, we should have a component of affordable housing in the mixture there. And, you know, I know that Lance Chimka, through economic development, has done a lot of issues with affordable housing. And I also think the ARP funds, the American Rescue Plan funds, maybe that can play into it too. But thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Kahari.
Yeah, and right on cue, the next question is about the COVID relief funds. At the city and county level, we'll start with Councilwoman Prizio and go back in reverse order. So Councilwoman Prizio, Councilman Lavelle, Councilwoman Strassburger, and then Mr. Mulvaney. Around COVID relief, there has been a lot of discussion and even some criticism of how the process is played out. And I know the city and the county have both gone through processes of earmarking the COVID relief funds. So my question is what can the bodies of council, city and county council, do to potentially get more involvement? And are you comfortable with the process, how it's taking place, and obviously for the county council members, how it's taking place at the county level, and obviously for our city council members as well as the candidate Connor as well? How do you feel about how the process has played out here locally in the disbursement and the earmarking of those allocation of those funds? I believe you're still on mute, Councilwoman. There you go.
The county received $380 million in American Rescue Plan money. So the county has decided only to spend $99 million this year. And then we have till 2024 to spend the entire amount. So I think that gives us an opportunity to maybe mold some other programs with this. You know, I know a lot, I mean, the majority of it is for government services, and we have done some for radio replacements and public safety upgrades. But the majority of it is to replace the revenue that was lost. But I'm hoping to have some meetings, especially in my district. I'm planning one on November 10th to discuss the whole budget process and, you know, how everyone can have a seat at the table to discuss it. But I agree. I think there should be transparency. This is a lot of money, and the money can be very transformational.
Thank you. Councilman Lavelle.
Thank you. So I'm gonna let Councilwoman Strassburger focus in on a lot of the process moving forward, because she has been one of the strongest advocates on council about ensuring that council is hearing more and more from the public on and better transparency as it relates to the process leading up to adopting the ARP spending plan. I was comfortable with it. One of the criticisms we heard in council was, you're moving too soon. You don't understand what our concerns are. And while I understand the sentiment, I felt very differently about it, because every day that I get up, there's an email, there's a call. When I see someone in the street, every day, when I go to community meetings, when I was at the public safety meeting prior to getting on with this, every day, members of the public, of our constituency say, here's what we need you to focus on. We need more money for affordable housing, as we were just talking about. We need money to pave our streets that are run down. We need money for social services. We need money for X, Y, and Z. And so all year long, council members, at least I am, and I believe most of my colleagues are as well, are collecting that information. And usually we use it when it's time to go into the budget season. So once it's time to go into our capital budget, all year long, we've known this set of stairs needs repaired. This shelter needs fixed. This needs addressed. And so this year with the ARP dollars, we're able to do the same thing. We just did it in advance of the budget process. We did it with the ARP spending plan. And so I was comfortable with how we spent the plan. I also thought it was imperative that if what we know in the year prior to COVID, we had a report that came out talking about the state of affairs for Black Pittsburgh, especially Black women. If we know it's bad and we know the pandemic just exacerbated those problems, then we shouldn't be sitting on these dollars that are meant to help. We should rather adopt a plan and get those dollars turned around as quickly as possible to begin helping people. And so that's what City Council did. And I was proud of City Council for doing that. But we can always do better. We can always have more public engagement. And I think Councilwoman Strassburger is really going to lead us down a road to ensure, even with this budget cycle, that we're doing a better job, because we can always improve.
Thank you. Councilwoman?
Thank you. Yes, so I think that this was a real learning opportunity for me and some of my fellow council members through this process. Yeah, the first time I looked at the set of funding priorities through the ARP process, I thought this is a really good list of really important needs that are going to be met in the community, ranging from group violence intervention to housing to childcare. And it was a really strong list. And yet, because the public didn't feel as if they were engaged enough, there wasn't as much engagement on the front end to allow for them to co-create it along with council members, the final list of funding priorities was not felt to be transparent, equitable, and they were unhappy about the process. Rightly so, and I understand that. And it was a really great opportunity for me to look at the ARP process as sort of a miniature budget process and think and ask the question, why are we using the budget process that we currently do? And the answer is, we went into what was called Act 47, which is sort of the city version of bankruptcy 15 years ago. And out of that process, out of state control, came this process that we currently use to create our budget. There's no reason why we have to use that process anymore. If we wanted to, we could start the budget process rather than November for a final, or really, you know, the city council portion of it is November for a final vote at the end of December. We could be starting it January, February, meeting with the communities from January all the way through December in each council district to be able to understand and hear straight from the people who live in each council district in all neighborhoods of the city what their priorities are. And we could find a way to also capture what Councilman Lavelle is talking about, which is how do you capture and report out to the community what council members, what the mayor's office, what our 311 program is hearing every day, to be able to capture that, report out and say, this is our budget. This is the discretionary funding we have to actually spend on things that people care about. And here's why we chose to spend it on this, because we heard from you throughout the year as to what was important. And so I'm working with a number of different organizations. I look forward to continue to work with the Community Justice Project, the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, groups from Pittsburgh United, and hopefully some public policy students to start to look at this, recraft a new budget process that is more inclusive, that is also iterative. So it reports out, the community gets to look at it, and then we get to report how we're doing throughout the year on our budget as well. I think I'm really excited about this, as you can probably tell, and it's going to be a huge task. So I don't think it's going to be done in time for 2022. We'll be studying it and working through it in 2022, but even in 2022, we have the opportunity to start to meet council district by council district and really have a really our ears open approach to what the budget priorities need to be in every part of town.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mulvaney.
So from outside of council and doing advocacy for my own community, in my opinion, the rollout or this process rather was disastrous. People wanted to engage council, they were ready, they had ideas, and they were blown off. And the idea for this money shouldn't be plugging holes. I think what people want is transformational systemic change. Because that's what I think that our city and our current moment calls for. Council should have recognized the moment and approached the community to listen about what people's most important needs were in that moment. This isn't about potholes that needed fixed years ago. This is about COVID and responding to COVID. And not only that, but trying to remove the structural barriers to the things that people need the most right now. Stopping evictions and ensuring affordable housing, I think, should have been on the top of that list. Food insecurity, freedom of movement, I think, are things that we struggle with in District 4 as well as citywide that could have been talked about as well. And generally, we as members of City Council need to encourage civic engagement and listen to people when they're engaging with us, not giving a meeting or lending an ear and then pushing off action. I consider myself an activist. And I believe when someone's motivated enough to get off the couch and engage, and not just do that as an individual, but get all their friends and all the people that care about the same things up and organize to talk about an issue, we have a responsibility to engage and listen and act on their behalf. And I think that City Council missed a very critical opportunity to do that with this funding. And I'm glad to hear that things are changing and systems are changing, but I think that a huge opportunity was missed.
Thank you for that. I did, want to give opportunity if any of the council members wanted, to respond or talk about any of the other, efforts that were made before we go to the next question. If not, Miracle.
Yes, continuing on, and this is more for the city council candidates. Recently, there has been some conversation about the proposed legislation that would give council oversight on the people that the mayor would like to appoint for various positions. In the process, a lot of people have questioned the timing of the legislation, even though I believe Councilman Burgess did say he's been trying to pass this since 2009. Can you just talk about the legislation, what the legislation is going to do, how it would impact the ability for the mayor to pick an administration, and how it coincides with voters picking a different administration and making sure that this is not an obstructionist legislation. I'll start with Councilman Lavelle, Councilwoman Strassburger, and then Council candidate Mulvaney. You can chime in, and then Councilwoman Prizio, if you would like to also add in, you can as well.
Thank you, Miracle. So two things. One, I cannot speak to the intent of the legislation as I'm actually not the author, nor has council taken the legislation up for consideration yet. When this legislation got introduced, it cannot come up to council until the current mayor is given 30 days to review it and provide comment on the actual legislation. So we won't have a chance to discuss it until it comes back over from the administration with their comment on it. So based upon that, I haven't decided one way or the other what I will do with the legislation because it hasn't come before us yet. What I generally understand of the legislation is that currently all directors of departments, so Public Works Director, Finance and Law, PLI, Property License and Inspection, all these various directors require council approval. And my understanding is what this legislation would then do is say, in addition to the directors that require approval from city council, just to be clear, the mayor, the incoming mayor, whomever that may be, will submit names to city council for approval of the various departments, and city council will hold interviews and will approve those positions. What this legislation also does is take it a step further, where we would then also have to approve, I believe, the deputy directors and potentially some supervisors, I think. But with that being said, I have not formed a formal opinion on the bill yet, as it has not come before council for discussion. I believe the mayor has, I think, 2 more weeks before it'll come back for us for actual discussion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I don't have too much more to add to that. That's my understanding as well, and I'm in the same position. I haven't formed a decision on this because we haven't really discussed this. I'm not gonna jump too quickly into making any kind of policy decision until I've had the time to understand the motivation for it, hear from the bill sponsor, and discuss it at our standing committee meeting once it comes back to council. And this particular bill is, as Councilman Lavelle said, gets a longer sort of review from the mayor's office too. So I'm interested to hear what the current mayor's office has to say about it, what the bill sponsor, Reverend Burgess, has to say about it, and what what others who might be presenting to council, whether they're public commenters, members of the public, anyone. I do a couple of thoughts though. In the time that I've been either working for city council or sitting on city council, I have never once seen council use their power to veto a mayor's decision to appoint a director. And I've seen them be heavily questioned. I've seen it look like a Senate confirmation committee in some cases, but I've never seen council veto or disapprove of and vote down an appointment for a director or a chief. And so it's unclear to me whether there's support in council for this bill to pass. I think a lot of people a lot of council members are dubious about it, but if it does pass, it's unclear to me how much it would actually be used, or whether we would actually exercise that power if it did pass. So yeah, there's a lot to learn about this particular bill, and I look forward to it being discussed when it comes up in council in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mulvaney?
Sure. So as a member of the Green Party, I think that decentralized government is really important, and balance of power is important. But again, generally speaking, I think that moving power from one concentration to another is bad. And we have to keep in mind who's going to be given that power, right? It's going to be interesting to see how council shakes down on this. I will also say that I'm generally concerned with the path that the conversation is taking around the power of city council members, right? So there's been other discussions about giving city council members the power to greenlight developments in their districts. And my opponent, for example, the incumbent in District 4, is not a city planner. He's probably the furthest thing from it. Is he really in a position to be able to greenlight or red light certain developments? Places where his money comes from are also questionable. Do we really think his constituents that he's going to make the decision that's best for our communities? I don't think so. I think that sounds like a really unfunny and dangerous joke. So balance of power is important. But I think that we should also keep in mind who we are giving power to if we decide to shift it.
Thank you.
I think I'll just defer to the county council, the city council members and the mayor on this issue. Thank you.
All right, Kahari, next question.
Yeah, I have a county council question for Councilwoman Prizio. Recently, there was a paid sick leave legislation that was passed. Could you talk, a little bit about the process of getting that done, the role that you played, and why, it's important and what it means to the regional economy?
Thank you so much. So I was one of the original co-sponsors on the paid sick leave. It was education for me too. I thought, the best way to do it was through county council, but apparently the best way was to bring it through the health department first. But we did get it passed. I think it's not as expansive as the cities because it only applies to companies that have over 25 employees. But I mean, I think it's definitely a good step forward, and I think that brings it's a necessary thing, and I'm very happy that it passed unanimously. So yes, I think it was a good thing that happened on county council.
Perfect. And I know we talked a little bit about earlier about like development and everything that's happening. A lot of Pittsburgh really right now is kind of people call it a rebirth. Some say don't call it that, but in a situation where it's attracting businesses, it's attracting people to live here. It is actively recruiting, being on this list and trying to expand and update infrastructure. As council, what role do you see yourselves in making sure that these developments that are coming in are sustainable, that they're environmentally friendly, that they're not displacing people, and they're not causing long-term impacts? Because we're seeing a lot of investment within this region. And I'll go with Councilwoman Strassburger, Councilman Lavelle, and Council Candidate Mulvaney.
Thank you. This is the balance that we're walking right now. We want people to move here. We don't want to fall below a certain threshold of population. We don't want to see our population continue to decline like it has been the last 50 years. But we want the growth that's happening to be for everyone. Up until now, it hasn't been. It's been for the privileged and the wealthy. And so we do need to change our practices. So I'll say two things are going to sound like they conflict with each other, but I think that they can both be true. One is council does have the power in some ways to create both incentives and mandates to ensure that the development that does occur does so in a sustainable, environmentally friendly, equitable way that creates high-paying jobs that are inclusive. And doesn't displace people and doesn't displace workers. We can do that through mandates like inclusionary zoning for housing, but we can also do that by creating incentives. So for instance, if you want a tax abatement, if you want to be able to get a little bit off of paying your property taxes for a short period of time as an incentive to build in a certain part of town that needs new development, well, you're going to need to demonstrate that you're doing it in an environmentally sustainable and equitable way, that you're using union labor that's paying high-paying jobs, that you're hiring people from the local community, that you're engaging with the local community, and maybe if it's appropriate, engaging and signing a community benefits agreement so that the community truly is benefiting from it. Will that slow down the process? Maybe a little bit, but not if we actually institutionalize all of those practices and make sure that it's what you're expecting if you're developing an office building and bringing a company here and bringing new jobs here. If you know what you're getting into when you come, it might not slow down the process because you'll just automatically do it. At the same time, I feel like city council is only as powerful as its partners, right? Allegheny County is a partner, and it's many different departments and levels of government there. The state is a partner, but also our biggest employers have to be partners. We need our biggest employers to really step up and be better than they are now at providing good, high-paying jobs that are equitable and inclusive. And our universities are partners. We need to make sure we're working with our universities and our schools and our education system to be both educating our children and our students and our university students in the best possible way, and then working with us as local leaders to create incentives for those people, whether they are international students coming here for university, or whether they are homegrown Pittsburgh students, to want to stay in Pittsburgh, to want to start their lives here and grow their families here in Pittsburgh. Can't do anything like that without the partnership and leveraging those partnerships. So more and more I see that, we're limited in the way that we can work at city council. We need to work with so many different others to make that a reality here.
Agreed. But to Councilwoman Strassburger's point, one such example of where you can have the zoning regulations in place to encourage sustainable development, encourage more affordable housing is you can look at the Uptown. We adopted an eco district bill a few years ago, which has things in it that says if you want to go higher, then you have to provide affordable housing. If you want this, then here's a community benefit that must be made in return for that. And so there are policies that the city has begun to put in place to encourage sustainable development. Councilwoman Strassburger also mentioned community benefits agreement. At the very beginning, I mentioned the Lower Hill development. That does have a community benefits agreement attached to it. And so we can use both the hammer as well as our legal authority to implement certain things. So as an example, we created a LERTA district. By definition, what it basically means is all the taxes that will be generated through the redevelopment of the Lower Hill district site, which is going to be $1 billion development, can only be deployed in the rest of the Hill District neighborhood. So they go into a special fund that'll be used to help redevelop the Middle and Upper Hill District so that you don't have a scenario like the waterfront in Homestead, as an example, where you did that development, but on 8th Avenue, you turned us back to it, and 8th Avenue never benefited from it. So rather, we're taking the tax revenue now that we are working with and deploying it into the community to fix up people's homes so that as the values go up, they can actually capture that value and stay and be able to stay in their home. We're using that money to fund small business development along Center Avenue so that long-term business owners like Big Tom, who's been renting a barbershop there for the last 20 years or so, will now have an opportunity to actually own his own building and establish his own business so that it'll actually benefit from the redevelopment of the Lower Hill. So there are a number of different things that we are and can do to ensure equitable development. And those are just a few examples.
Go ahead, Connor.
Thank you. I'll just want to clarify first. People can mean a lot of different things when they talk about sustainability, right? And the city has a couple of different ways to do that. Certainly can't just think about how much water is coming off of the building, how many trees are being planted on the ground. It's sustainability is or should be a combination of working with what we have now and what we want to see in the future, right? And part of that is going to have to be working with what we have and meeting needs that we have right now. Talk about equitable growth when we're talking about like some of the incentives that council has used in the past and some of the things that have been called sustainable really seem quite dangerous, especially whenever we start talking about affordable housing. I think that if we want a truly sustainable future, we need to do some version of a localized Green New Deal, right? And when we're talking about jobs creation and future growth, we have to focus on things that are going to solve problems that we have right now and help solve problems that we know that we're going to face in the future, especially around uneven economic growth and climate change. So working on energy solutions, local food systems, which I think doesn't get talked about enough in any corner of whatever issue council is talking about. Sustainable transportation, not crazy ideas like putting trolleys or self-driving cars through parks. We need real transportation solutions that we know work and make sure that they're serving people who are here right now. I also think it's important when we talk about CBAs that there's a history of them being ignored, either by developers or by city council. And, you know, we need to be really, really clear when we're talking about sustainability and future developments. I think that we need to set a new standard from within the city for what we're calling sustainable and what our sustainability goals are to ensure that the people who call Pittsburgh home right now, the people who make Pittsburgh work, can continue to do it and benefit from the sustainable growth, truly sustainable growth that we want to see from the city.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Prizio.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I agree. I think we should be working with the folks in the city. I mean, we do the same thing on the county level with LERTAs and TIFs, and we need to insist on project labor agreements so we have sustainable family sustaining jobs and community benefit agreements too that deal with sustainability. And it's very important that we work together and that when we give a tax incentive that the county does get something from that also.
Kahari?
You have another county question for Councilwoman Prizio. You have over, over the course of your tenure, but even more recently, have expressed some of your concerns about the goings on at the county jail. Can you talk about what for those who are concerned about what's happening? Can you talk a little bit about some of the recent events and what the public can do and your constituents can do, to raise awareness about what's happening? I know a lot of folks want to learn what they can do to get more, involved in being advocates, what's for happening. I know you were, supportive of the COVID-19 testing, some of the things that got voted down. So just talk a little bit kind of like the state of play at the county jail from your point of view and what the public can do to potentially get more involved, be more supportive of the inmates and things that are happening if they do share the same concerns that you do.
I do think that jail is one of the liabilities of the county. And I believe that the Jail Oversight Board is the board that should oversee the jails. I know the last contract with with the militarization of some of the techniques there, I just think is unacceptable. So I think the oversight board is the one that should be looking over that. And I think everyone needs to be at the table. The chief executive needs to be at the table. The warden needs to be at the table. So we could really solve what the issue that is going on in the jails. I mean, I believe that that we should really reform the the cash bail system is an issue. I think people are in the jails because they can't afford bail. And I think that has to do with the magistrates, and maybe they can help. But I think that we have that oversight board. It's led by a lot of strong individuals. I think that should be the first point. And I think contracts, when it's such a large contract, I think it should have some oversight. So I think it's a difficult situation, but I think we have an oversight board that, if it's functionally properly, it can be a definite asset.
Thank you, Erika.
Yes, so I know we're wrapping up the last couple of questions. We know we talked a little bit about, population earlier. We know that we are going through a redistricting process right now, that's just getting off of the ground. And so my question is, what hopes do you have for your district? And if your district is going to change, obviously we don't know right now. But if your district changes, how will you go about building community relations with the newer people in your district? And we'll start Councilwoman Strassburger, Councilman Lavelle, and candidate Mulvaney.
Thank you for the question. So the district I represent was one of the few to grow in population this last census. So it will inevitably shrink in size even further, from one neighborhood plus 3 partial neighborhoods to something even smaller than that. And whether I lose part of Oakland, whether I lose part of Point Breeze, whether I lose part of Shadyside or Squirrel Hill, it's going to be an adjustment. And it'll be unlikely in my mind that I do something more than that my district does something more than just shrink, that I shrink in one place and then grow in another place. I don't think that's going to happen. So really, it's 2 things. One, it's my responsibility to hand over and start to introduce that council member who will be taking a portion of the district I represent, so that the transition is seamless, and that they get accustomed to working with the people who live and work and play in that part of the district. The other thing is just a continuation on the thought that we need to ensure that other parts of the city are growing in population, and that development, whatever you mean by the term development, what I mean is, equitable, sustainable, growth, population growth, but also jobs and housing growth in the city happens in more places than in District 8 and District 7, that it's happening across the rivers and in areas that we haven't seen investment in a really long time. So a little bit aside from that, but if we continue only growing in certain parts of the city, we're just going to continue to see the same kind of pattern 10 years from now in the next census.
So my district will grow, but by just a little bit. It won't be very large at all. More than likely, I have part of Perry Hilltop now. More than likely, I'll probably have all of it, which will make getting to know those residents pretty easy, as I already attend Perry Hilltop community meetings. But we'll probably spend a day and get out and knock some doors and meet the new residents that we represent. We normally send them a newsletter to inform them that we are their new elected official, let them know some of the things we're working on, give them all our information so they can be in contact. My district will grow just by a little. The largest district that I believe has to actually grow within the city of Pittsburgh is District 1, which is represented by Councilman Wilson. So I'm also just supposed to be a majority minority district. So finding the appropriate population to maintain that will be tough. But that's something we'll also be looking at. But that's what will happen with my district.
And for people who are not aware, Councilman Lavelle, could you just explain what the majority minority district is in reference to?
Oh, yes, I apologize. There are actually in the city of Pittsburgh supposed to be 2 majority minority districts, which means that you have a majority of minority residents who reside in that district. So that essentially that you get the majority of minorities are above 50% that are actually living in that district. I think I'm currently around 48% minority population. So we'll need to adjust it to try to get me above 50%. And there's supposed to be 2 in the city of Pittsburgh. Reverend Burgess is the other one. And the reason for this is, if you go back, at one point in time, all city council members were elected by the citywide. You ran citywide, but then there was a lawsuit that essentially said, if you continue to ensure that council members have to run citywide, you have a less likely chance of an African-American achieving office. Therefore, a lawsuit was filed, and then they created the by-districts.
Thank you so much. And candidate Mulvaney.
Sure. Yeah, it's certainly an interesting time to see how redistricting shakes down, not just in the city of Pittsburgh, but across the country. But I think that my love for grassroots democracy prepares me well for it, and my love for civic engagement, and that's what would be at the forefront. If District 4 changes, I would want to meet everyone, former elected officials, community leaders, people walking down the street. I know a few people over my district's borders, and if they were to join our district, then they would certainly get a door knock as well. But I would essentially contact everyone, just like we've been doing across District 4 now, and get to know the people, and welcome them into our district.
Thank you so much. And you as well, a county councilwoman, because again, everyone's district here may actually change.
Yeah, we're going to be discussing this on Wednesday regarding council districts. So I'm looking forward to that conversation and see how things change. I have a very diverse district, and I don't know if that's going to impact me, but I'm willing to facilitate communication among all council members, however that's best.
Thank you so much. And so now we get to the point in our program where we ask what I call is the miracle question. We get real deep into policy for the vast majority of the hour, but we try to end it on a lighter note, on a more humanizing note. I guess we'll go into the order that we started. We'll go with Councilwoman Prizio, Councilman Lavelle, Councilwoman Strassburger, and then candidate Mulvaney. And yeah, we started asking this question early when we started this podcast, and I call it the miracle question. And the question is just simply, what brings you joy? Just to kind of humanize, we know we're in the middle of silly season when people become political caricatures, and we kind of in the political world get stripped of our humanity. So this is just our own little way of bringing some humanity back to the political process. So starting with Councilwoman Prizio, what brings you joy right
now? What would bring me joy is I want to do what I can for the county. I like to connect people. I like to solve problems. And I always think of that proverb where, I'd like to plant the tree. And even if I will not enjoy the shade of the tree, I hope my children and my grandchildren might enjoy that, and other residents. So I just want to make a little bit of an impact, make it a little bit better than when I came in.
Thank you. Councilman Lavelle.
Going to see a young man named Kahari Mosley perform.
Good answer.
I was out of town during your last performance with Selectus. I wasn't able to be there, but I did see some videos. So, but no, I'm a big fan of music. Me and Kahari used to debate who our favorite rappers were, and don't let people sleep on Kahari's skills himself. But so music brings me joy. But even more than that, these days, it's my children. Kahari mentioned I got to see him at the baseball field the other day when my son was playing his last baseball game of the season. So seeing them thrive and seeing them succeed brings me a lot of joy.
Thank you. Councilwoman Strassburger.
What brings me joy is seeing people from different parts of Pittsburgh to come together and meet each other and enjoy each other's company. Music, live music in particular, which we haven't had much of these days. Being outside whether it's outside in Mellon Park, or whether it's outside in, you know, a state park where the trees are so big that you feel minuscule in comparison. It puts it in perspective for you. And my 2.5-year-old son brings me joy.
Thank you. Connor?
Getting stuff done and making change certainly, you know, makes me joyous. But in the spirit of the question, truly my dog, walking my dog and taking her to the park and playing fetch with her, and you know, it's tough doing that when it's crazy season. But yeah, I look forward to taking much longer walks with her whenever crazy season is over, and cooking as well. There's all kinds of great seasonal stuff to make right now. I look forward to making like a nice roasted squash in the near future. So that will bring me some joy.
Thanks so much. I'm going to turn it over to Miracle to take us out this evening.
Yes, so I want to thank all of our candidates for joining us this evening. We greatly appreciate it. You can turn your cameras off or leave the studio as we do our wrap up. But we wanted to have this conversation with you, especially around redistricting and the information that's coming up with our city and county council, because there's a lot of legislation on the table. A lot of times people forget that our city and county councils are working councils. They've passed a lot of legislation in the past couple of years, and there's a lot of stuff that's coming up, including this possible change to the way the committee's assignments are going to get placed. There is still an issue of what the COVID dollars are going to look like, as well as, you know, our annual budgets for our cities and our counties. So it's always very important to get to know the people who are running, even if they do not have an opponent. We want to make sure that everyone understands what these positions do, how long they last, and what districts are being represented, what neighborhoods are being impacted. As we said at the top of the program, there's a lot of stuff going on. Today is National Coming Out Day. It's also Indigenous Peoples Day, and the Day of the Girl. And we wanted to make sure we took time to acknowledge all of the celebrations and the reflections that are happening today, and remind people that the personal is political, and to remind people to get involved, like we said earlier at the beginning, to register to vote, to volunteer for these campaigns. And I know Councilwoman Lavelle did talk about, you know, Kahari being on the mic. And this weekend, if you want to get outside, you want to meet people, you want to have some great food, talk more to candidates, we have partnered with Keystone Progress for a fundraiser. We are going to be out in the spot. It's going to be a live open mic. So if you want to jump on the mic, if you are a karaoke champ, if you have a song you've been just like dying to let out, come jump on the mic with us. Everyone is welcome to attend. We invite everyone to come out to relax. We will have outside space. So for those who are worried still about COVID-19, we will be outside in accordance with guidelines. And we are the majority of the people who are working and organizing have been vaccinated. So that is what brings you comfort and helps you feel more comfortable coming outside. Again, we invite you to join us. Please make sure you're tuning into our series, making sure you're registered to vote. And if you have any extra financial support, please make sure you donate to One Hood Power so we can keep bringing you these great programs and outreach, and a lot of really, really amazing content that we have coming up for you in the next quarter. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Kahari.
Thank you so much. I want to thank Councilwoman Anita Prizio, Councilman Daniel Lavelle, Councilwoman Erika Strassburger, and candidate Connor Mulvaney for joining us this evening and helping us facilitate, I think, a very enlightening and in-depth educational conversation. You know, one thing that we, try to do is just, get beyond the politics and do some civic education. And I really appreciate the insight that all four of our guests tonight gave us. And again, for those who are just joining us or joined us late, we were joined by Councilwoman Anita Prizio from Allegheny County Council, 2 members of Pittsburgh City Council, Councilman Daniel Lavelle, as well as Councilwoman Erika Strassburger, as well as the Green Party candidate for our City Council in the South Hills, a section of the city, Connor Mulvaney. And I just want to again thank them so much for joining us and helping us foster a very enlightening conversation about city and county government. And that was the 5th in our series of 6 fall forums. It feels like it was just Labor Day and we hadn't even got out of the starting gate with our judicial forum, with our statewide judicial forum. And now we only have 1 forum left. Next Monday, we will be joined by the slate of 5 of the candidates for the Court of Common Pleas. As you know, we did not endorse in the vast majority of offices that folks were running for this year, but we did make the unusual step of joining with the Elect Justice Coalition and supporting a group of candidates running for the Court of Common Pleas. That was originally the slate of 8. 5 of the 8 made it through the primary to the general election. And we will be joined by those 5 individuals, and that is Renna Watson, Nicola Henry Taylor, Tiffany Sizemore, Lisa Middleman, and Chelsea Wagner. Full disclosure, as many know, Chelsea Wagner is my wife, and also the sitting county controller. But we will be joined by those 5 individuals next Monday night to close out our fall candidate forum series, and then we will have 2 election previews. We will have a local preview 2 weeks before the election. Well, actually not 2 weeks, 8 days before the election. And the Monday night before the election on November 1st, we will have a statewide election preview. So we got still a full slate coming up as we wind down. Want to thank everyone who has joined us. And Miracle, I'm going to pass it to you to close us out officially for the evening. And thanks again for our guests for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you all so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're watching the programs. This week we do have This Week in White Supremacy. We also have On Tilt on Thursdays. I do not believe we have any special programming this week. We do have a couple of things that we are dropping. In addition, please make sure you're staying safe, staying warm, being out there, enjoying this last bit of good weather we have. Please make your voting plan, and we will see you next Monday at 7 p.m. Y'all have a great evening.
Take care. Good night.